Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Page 112 tag for November 2024. The Page 112 tag was brought to BookTube by Sean the Book Maniac. It was based off of a French literary prize wherein they comprised the long list of said prize solely by reading page 112 of the books in contention. These books were novels, and page 112 in most novels falls somewhere in the middle. It's supposed to be after all the polished for editors pages when you get to the real raw writing. And without the context for the rest of the story, as we do, the point is to solely judge the book based on the quality of the writing on that one page. So I have been using this tag ever since the beginning of COVID, once per month, to, slowly whittle down my physical TBR shelves while building them back up again. I use this Books and Cats mug. I have pieces of paper inside, very few at this point of the year because I replenish at the beginning of each year. These pieces of paper are titles that are on my TBR shelves, physical shelves, that I have acquired in 2023 or earlier. And what I do each month is I sit here and I pick out 3 pieces of paper randomly. Then I share page 112 on camera with you and decide on one book ultimately to add to my month's TBR. Or at least that's how I usually play the game. Every 4th month I, spice things up a bit, and I take the runners-up from the past 3 months and pit them against each other and choose from that batch. And I coincided that one of these special months is always November, because November is also NaNoWriMo for me when I'm trying and attempting to write 50,000 words, which takes up a fair bit of time, and it's nice to not have to do so much post-production for these videos, since all of the clips of, my reading and juxtaposing the text in front of me, they're already made. So yeah, very excited also to give these books a second chance. So without further ado, let's go back into the past. I sucked in my stomach and got taller. I remembered vaguely Mama and Papa talking about the pogrom in Kantakusen a long time ago when I was 10. A pogrom is something I hope you'll never see. It's like a street full of men, like the one Hava bumped into this afternoon, yelling and beating up the Jews. Sarah looked down at her shoes. Does the paper say they're going to have one? The paper says that Jews killed a Christian boy to use his blood for Passover matzos. Ick, that's stupid. Yes, well, stupidity is the most dangerous thing on earth, and we live in very stupid times. So, now we're going to go home and talk about this with your father. We passed the statue of Pushkin at the entrance to the park. I remembered when it was put up, with bouquets of flowers arranged in the base. I wondered if Pushkin would have told people how silly it is to think Jews drank Christian blood. Who thought these things up? If anyone could make up a lie like this, maybe they drank the blood themselves. When Papa read the handbill, his skin turned the color of wax. I didn't think he could look more pale. We'll talk about it after dinner. Dinner was quiet and quick. Mama sent us to clean up, and she and Papa went into their room. Since the boys left, I didn't have to sleep behind the stove anymore, though sometimes I missed the private feeling I'd had behind my little blanket. Of course we could hear them anywhere in the house. When they whispered, I listened harder or walked silently to the wall of their bedroom. Isaac, I have a very bad feeling about this. Something terrible is going to happen. Always a feeling, never a fact. In the Talmud. Isaac, please listen to me. You know what happened in Shpol and in Nikolaev. It's been 4 or 5 years. It was almost 20 before that. This is Kishinev, Miriam, not some little shtetl. Isaac, you know what this means. Papa got up and started pacing. I knew he knew she was right. The men respect you. Talk to the chief rabbi. Maybe you can go to the mayor or to the police and find out what they know, if they're prepared for this. So yeah, we're into historical fiction now, and it very much feels like Monday night quarterbacking sometimes when you get a scene where people are like, this is Kishinev, it won't be that bad. And you know that, in fact, the pogrom in Kishinev was horrible and is well known for being a horrible pogrom. And then I guess it also zeroes in the time frame of this historical fiction, that it's probably somewhere around 1905 when that pogrom happened in Russia. It was a major one in a city, like as they're saying. This isn't some shtetl, you know, this is supposed to be a more cosmopolitan place where maybe, you know, rumors of Jews drinking blood won't, you know, surface, but it does. So, yeah, I mean, I'm always interested in, you know, this type of cultural reality. It's the cultural reality that my family came from when they immigrated to the US, where these sorts of anti-Semitic beliefs could be common. So I am intrigued. There were a few things on the page that kind of confused me. I guess it's, you know, the page 112 working in a way to say what could be improved on the page, because I don't know. I mean, well, it's nitpicky to say, like, we start with a first-person narrator, but then this other person named Sarah responds. So I guess they're two sisters talking with their mom in the park, I suppose. Another maybe nitpicky but less nitpicky thing is, like, you know, she goes from a sentence about how the narrator liked sleeping behind the stove, but we could hear her parents anywhere in the house, and I just thought that was kind of clunky, like we went from one idea to the next kind of quickly. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of making excuses, because I do feel like I would be very interested to read this, but I can only pick one book, or at least I should, because I have so much to read as it is this month. So I feel like I will be putting this one down, but we'll look forward to when I ultimately get to it. As tantalizingly close as he might be, Shuley folds his map and walks toward the center of town to check into his overpriced no-star hotel. And then there's a break. Miri had sniffed out his plan before he'd said a word. She'd come into the kitchen, her nose wrinkled, to find dinner already cooking, the dishes washed, and her husband home hours ahead of schedule. His jacket hung on the open stepladder, and Shuley stood at the Fleischig sink, squeezing the suds from the sponge. He had his sleeves rolled, half for chores and half for the argument ahead. "Who ever heard of a teacher being suspended along with a student?" Miri said as soon as he'd told her. "It's absurd." Gavriel had been given only a day, which would not go on his record. Shuley was put on ice for 2 weeks, the first without pay as sanction, the second back on the rolls for mental health. "Those are the reasons Davidov told you," Miri said. "It's all probably just to give the traumatized computer teacher a break." She'd then lifted the lid on a pot and tasted the soup Shuley was making. "Are you sure you're not fired?" Miri asked, dipping the spoon again and blowing the steam his way. "Not fired. Not yet. I'm pretty sure." She'd relaxed her shoulders so precipitously that Shuley saw them drop. Her tone had also softened as she asked what he planned to do. "Make big dinners," he'd said. "Do more laundry. Cold the bookshelves. I don't mean for your suspension. I mean, what are you going to do about letting this craziness go?" All right. So this is another page like in the first, book where there's a break, but it happens, I guess, early enough that, it's not too jarring or anything. Like, we just know somebody's going to what seems like a crappy hotel, but most of, what's on this page is an intriguing, I think, conversation between a husband and a wife. It seems like Shuley is a teacher who got suspended after some sort of altercation with the student Gavriel, which is, not something I think anybody necessarily was expecting to hear, or maybe these characters were, especially like the very final line where Miri is asking, when are you going to let the craziness go? Shuley obviously has something going on that's, impeding him a bit. So that part is interesting. I feel like some of the dialogue in between is a little more clunky, but in terms of, a conflict, a teacher having a conflict that interferes with his work is, something you might want to learn more about. And to me, it almost seems like maybe he has a laissez-faire attitude, he's talking about a suspension as in, shruggy, I'll do some, random chores around the house, not thinking too big about it, or, he's maybe not as concerned as Miri is about whether or not he's actually fired. And other than that, there's, some commentary that I immediately can tell like puts it in a Jewish setting, like the Fleischig table, which is comes from the Yiddish word, is the table where you prepare meat dishes, because when you keep kosher, you keep that separate from the milk and dairy dishes. So anyway, and you know the names also feel pretty Jewish, but yeah, and this title and all sorts of things. So I liked this. The day before yesterday, I was swimming in the Mediterranean off of Port Bell with Golo Man, entirely in the nude, while the others had their siesta. Fine young man, Golo. Under different circumstances, you might have been jealous. And you, too, I trust, are also well. Your students love you, and your friends keep you busy. Your bed must be full of boyfriends by now, and I can't blame you, as long as you kick them out before I get back. Have you perhaps by now settled upon one of the houses you described in your earlier letter? Whichever it is, I promise I'll love it. I'll get home to you and to it as soon as I can. For now, dear E., imagine how grateful I am to have a wife who understands the necessity and urgency of my work here, as I sincerely hope you still do. With love, as ever, your V. He blotted the letter and capped the pen. Grant, reading over his shoulder, made a noise of quiet bemusement. I hardly merit a mention, he said. Varian turned in his chair. I wrote your name twice, didn't I? Perhaps I'm not as fine a man as young Golo. Grant sat before him on the bed. They had agreed to meet for a drink on Varian's balcony, while Katznelson visited a colleague at the university. Grant and Lisbon. From some secret linguistic reserve, he'd produced a knowledge of Portuguese that had allowed him to shop for a sky-blue cravat in the manner of the local dandies. In his pocket, a silver cigarette case filled with a set of Cuban cigarillos, and a diminutive silver cutter. What could Varian have written to Eileen about Elliot Grant, the apparition who refused to disappear? Varian had nothing to hide, as regarded his own behavior. Not that he and Eileen were in the habit of hiding anything. Eileen detested ignorance above all else, and most of all her own ignorance in personal affairs. When they'd agreed early on that a cosmopolitan marriage allowed for an occasional adventure on the side, they'd also agreed to be perfectly honest. It was no secret to Eileen that he'd had liaisons with men. She tolerated them as a peculiarity of his character. But how was he to be honest with her about Grant, when Grant's presence was still a matter of consternation and confusion? Okay, well, I'll just start to say it's kind of interesting to compare this one to the last book, which was about YA romance troubles. Maybe it would be easier if, the protagonist of that story could just, have both boys, It would make it much easier if she were in a cosmopolitan relationship with her lovers. I mean, not that I really know enough about the context of that story. And anyway, to get back to this one. I'd forgotten a lot of the details other than Holocaust, but Varian Grant was an American rescuer who went abroad to Europe to try to rescue artists and such from, persecution. And I remember I read about his complicated past, maybe in an essay by Dara Horn in People Love Dead Jews, which maybe I should read again before reading this book. But yeah, as far as this is at all about his rescue missions, maybe the very end of his letter to his wife maybe alluded to it. But other than that, he mostly seems to be on some, striking romantic vacation where he can't seem to shake this guy Grant, I suppose. I mean, even I guess if you're going to have dalliances with men, maybe there's still parameters that could be crossed. Like, it kind of seems like from this exposition that he wants to be a little more casual with these relationships, and Grant might be sticking around and be a little more important than all that. And what's going to happen then when he returns home to Eileen, who he's expecting will kick all her lovers out of bed? So presumably he should do the same. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting how, having the letter and having his lover read over his shoulder gives this opportunity for a lot of exposition where we can explain what the marriage is like and all of that. And it's definitely, I don't know, I guess I'm getting the feeling that it's going to be a really chock-full book. It's a very chunky book. I know from, the cover copy, it's going to be about some of his rescue missions, which don't, appear at all in this page. So it gives off the impression it's going to be a lot more hyper-specific about his personal life as well. Ah woo! Ah woo! That is my on-the-fly interpretation of a come back to the present sound. So here we are back in November, and here's my recap of the 3 books you just heard about. My August book was Beyond the Pale by Alana Dykewoman. My September book was Cottage.com by Nathan Glander. And my October book was The Flight Portfolio by Julie Oranger. And to be fair, when it comes to, knocking one of the books off of this TBR to start with, I think it was going to have to be this one for, a slightly non-appropriate reason. I mean, I think the writing on this page is pretty good. I'm intrigued by the relationship Varian Fry is having with his wife and his lover and his male lover at that. And by the way, although it's not on the page, I know there's also a lot in here about the Holocaust and his role in attempting to save people. But it is so long and I have so much to do that adding this chunkster would be pretty difficult. So that leaves me with these 2 books, Beyond the Pale and Cottage.com. And, for a long time I was thinking maybe I would go with this book for another non-page 112 tag reason. I acquired it during NaNoWriMo when I went to Little District Books, which is a DC bookstore I'll link to down below that specializes in LGBTQ fiction, which, again, that aspect of this book is not on the page. Certainly it's implied by the pseudonym of the author. So anyway, I thought it'd be fun, to basically read a Nano book during Nano. But at the same time, I've been reading a lot of kind of hyper-serious Jewish history lately, about the Holocaust and etc. And I'm just adding, the Kishinev pogrom in. Feels a bit bleak on top of that, like maybe a little bit of a break would be nice. And I mean, were also some clunky bits that I pointed out, technically in both books, but maybe more in this one anyway. So ironically, it kind of sounds like Cottage.com might be the less serious book. Kaddish is a Jewish custom having to do with, mourning the dead every year. And this book, I think, has to do with a son trying to find somebody to embody this ritual for him because he's, obligated religiously to do it for certain relatives. So anyway, I feel like there's something a little lighter in here. And even in this page where even though, the protagonist has, lost his job or has been suspended from his job technically, he seems to kind of be taking it on a more lighthearted keel. Whether his wife is or not, that's a little more up for debate. But maybe this is a little less serious about worldly events. And after this month and, what's been happening in the world and what happens in U.S. politics lately, maybe something a little more escapist, hoping that this will be, is appropriate. So yes, I think I will be adding Cottage.com onto my month's TBR. Oh, and I also got this book from Capitol Hill Books. It is a used bookstore in Capitol Hill, DC, one of those crammed to the gills row houses filled with used books. And this one I got from my free little library's book sale at a local book festival, the Gaithersburg Book Festival. So I'll link to all of that stuff down below as well. And also I will link to the Goodreads pages for all 3 of these books if you're interested down below, and my playlist of TBR videos. And with that, I am mostly finished with this video. The other big thing I like to do in my page 112 tag outros is highlight a booktuber partaking in a TBR game or a readathon, something of that nature, because I feel like I'm part of the club with these monthly videos, and it's always fun to, highlight the creativity of fellow booktubers. And the TBR game I'm highlighting this month, I've actually known about for quite a while, and so that's exciting to finally give it its due on this channel. And that game is called the Hype TBR game, put on by none other than Literary Hype Woman, is her username. And this is a game I believe she plays monthly. And it's basically one of those board games where, you know, you go around the board and you land on certain tiles and pick a prompt based on the tile. The prompts themselves, I think, are relatively you know, similar to most other prompts. But, you know, the tiles that she lands on are sort of based off of sort of hypey things like microphone or social media. I think so, you know, word of mouth maybe, and social media finds. So that's, you know, pretty, you know, creative in its own way. And she has some sort of upbeat music against her videos as well. So anyway, I'll link to her playlist down below. And I hope you are all finding a good balance in your readings. If you want some serious, if you want some funny, if you want a mix. I will be back on this channel imminently to post my NaNoWriMo Week 2 vlog, where I take you around town with me and discuss my month in NaNoWriMoing. So stay tuned for that. And then later this week, I will be returning with a more BookTube adjacent video where I'm going to be playing the Would You Read It challenge. Where I take a ballot of books, which will actually be a ballot of BookTube Prize octafinalists from yesteryear, and I read the beginnings of those books on camera with you, and we discuss what we think of those books, so stay tuned for that as well. And anyway, yeah, I think that about covers it for me now. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.